Jim Holman with the San Diego Reader newspaper, and I'm with Anthony Davi, the local expert on Little Italy's history, anyway. And we've just spoken about how and when the Italians, and Sicilians especially, came to Little Italy. At first, they came here for the fishing.
Yes,
And that was quite a draw.
indeed.
Many, if not most, of the men who came here were fishermen.
That's right. And the canneries were interested to recruit them with a promise of a job, maybe financing for their boat, and got them set up in business, and they got to work.
What was interesting to me in reading this book by Judith Moore that we're going to be talking about is that the canneries were not, as they became later on, down by National Avenue or National City,
Right.
but they were up here.
That's right.
So they were, because I think Filippa San Filippo was it she? I think it was she who was Bompensiero, our main character's mother-in-law.
Yeah.
Worked at the cannery, or maybe his sister. I'm trying to remember now. Anyway, it comes up in the book.
Yes, I think Bompensero's mother.
Okay, that she.
Yeah.
Oh, Bompensiero's mother. Oh, yeah, and maybe his sister.
Yes, indeed.
Worked at the cannery up
Right.
here on Laurel or somewhere up there, right?
Right around the corner.
Amazing. So fishing was the main occupation, but something happened in 1919, which was the passage of Prohibition.
Right.
And that had a strong effect on the Italians, because Italians were used to making their own spirits, wine mostly. And as I recall, the people they made their own spirits and had, barrels of wine in their basements.
He did.
Now, because there was a great demand after Prohibition by everybody for illegal alcohol, the Italians started to sell their wine to non-Italians, and it became quite a little business. And a big era of bootleg liquor came before in the 20s and 30s. 20s, I guess, because Prohibition was over in the early 30s. So in the 20s, that was a different era for San Diego, and there were raids right around where we're sitting. We're now sitting in the back of the church, Our Lady of the Rosary, at State and Date Street, and Columbia Street's in front of us. And can you recall some of the places where they had these raids? I know you weren't here at
Yes.
the time. But you're right.
Well, they were along the 1600 block of India Street, which is the main street in Little Italy. They were along Columbia Street, right around the corner from the main raids, and on the 1600 block of India Street. And these were raids of 8 different homes and properties and apartments. And
So the cops came in, and they went down to the basements, because I guess they knew.
yeah,
Seems to me that at least a few of them were able to conceal their wine. There was one. Was it Bompensiero's house? Somebody's house up here on just north of here on Columbia. They had a system where the wine went through the pipes of the house.
Yeah. And Bompensiero was interviewed about that by the police, and he eventually they saw a staining, and they looked in the closet. They saw a staining on the floor, and they kind of followed it through, and they found this faucet system and
the plumbing
and the whole setup, and they asked Bompensiero, and he admitted to it. So it was a very sophisticated system, and there must have been a lot of planning that went into that, because you could also turn the tap and have liquor come out.
Wow.
I understand it.
So did he go to prison for that?
I think that in the one in 1930, I think Bompensiero eventually he went to McNeil.
McNeil, okay.
And I think the one in 28, he was possession of wine. I don't think he went for that. I think the one in 30, he eventually did time for.
Okay. But many people were involved here. It seems like
Yeah,
many, if not most, of the community were at least making their own wine, whether they were all selling it or not. But
right.
But the non-Italians in town knew they could get good wine over here in Little Italy.
There's talk that the police would stop by for a shot.
Yeah, and
Italians were making wine. Also, they were making wine for Holy Mass.
Yeah.
If a doctor would write a prescription, you could get wine for medical purposes, and you could, if you got a license, you could make a couple of gallons for your own use, but you couldn't sell it. So anything beyond that would have been sub rosa.
Background for Prohibition was many of these Midwestern and Southern states where, Protestantism, let's say, was the strongest ethos. They were the ones that pushed Prohibition. Why didn't Italians go along with it? And why were they susceptible to defying the law? You're a Sicilian, so
Right. Well, there's an old expression in Italian, vino fa buon sangue, wine makes good blood. They always felt that wine was salutary and enjoyed in moderation as part of the meal. They didn't think of it as something to get drunk on. That was not part of the culture. So the idea of banning something that, in a sense, they thought was salutary, was part of the meal, it seemed kind of a strange law.
Yeah. Well, it didn't go on for too long. By 1932, I believe, Prohibition was over. But for 10 years, it had a run, and it created a subculture here in Little Italy because you had people like Bompensiero who were willing to defy the law and go on the bad side of the law. We're going to talk about that a little bit in our next session.